Jarrod Bleijie, member for Kawana, Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Well, I want to address today the reprehensible comments from the member for Nicklin, Mr. Robert Skelton. Mr. Skelton has to consider today whether he is up to the job and he is the best person to represent the people of Nicklin on the Sunshine Coast. And I think the answer to that is no. This guy has a history of trolling, he has a history of abusing people, he has a history of using vulgar language, and I think the community of Nicklin are absolutely over it. I think the Premier should have condemned him. He is a reprehensible member of Parliament. The behaviour that he shows on his social media accounts and fighting with people and what he says about people is out of the norm of normal political debate and argy-bargy. This is a member of Parliament that treats his job with absolute disdain. This is what he says publicly. I'd hate to imagine what he says privately to his constituents. We saw emails last year going back and forward where someone was questioning a government policy of Mr. Skelton's, and he responded to that person in quite a bizarre way and also said the Day of Atonement is coming. This is a guy that threatens his own community. This is a member of Parliament that uses vulgar language to get a point across. It is not the behaviour of a member of Parliament. It is absolutely not the behaviour of a member of Parliament. Anastasia Palaszczuk is his boss. She is the Premier of the state. She is the leader of the Labor Party in Queensland. She should have condemned him strongly on this, other than saying yesterday, oh yes, well, it's not appropriate. That doesn't cut it. And this is not a once-off. Last year, he was using similar language in posts that he made on Facebook, not just on Twitter, but on Facebook. So he has a history of using vulgar language and treating people with absolute disdain. I think people have to question Nicklin whether they have a representative that has their best interests at heart, and I think the answer to that is an absolute no.
We asked him today if he'd learned from his mistakes from last year, and he actually said probably not. What do you think about that?
Well, that just shows that he's not up to the job. He's not servicing the people of the Sunshine Coast. He's not servicing the people of Nicklin. He's got this attitude that the only reason he took it down is because people then questioned how bad his use of language and the vulgar use of language he used on social media was, but then they forgot that he did exactly the same last year anyway. He is a regular offender. He is a repeat offender, and it is time for Anastasia Palaszczuk, if she wasn't so weak, to actually think about his position in the Labor Party, and he has to consider himself, his position as a member of Parliament. And I don't think he cuts the mustard in terms of the behaviour you must set as a member of Parliament. And as I said, politicians will get involved in the argy-bargy, but this is not the normal day-to-day politic of fighting with your opponents in government or opposition. This is behaviour unbecoming of a member of Parliament. And for him today to actually show no remorse and laugh when he walks away from a press conference of such a serious matter and showing no remorse just shows he doesn't care what people think. And that is not a person who should be in Parliament. That is not a person that should be representing the people of Nicklin on the Sunshine Coast. The people of Nicklin deserve a lot better than a member of Parliament that just abuses people and throws insults at people using vulgar language that we would not want our children to see or use. And he does it publicly. His apology today was fake. He didn't mean it. He never does. And as he said in his own words, he probably has never learnt his lessons from last time he was caught doing the same thing.
When we're confronting him about the issue today, he actually did try to turn it back on you and say you should see some of the things that you say in Parliament. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, everything I say in Parliament is subject to our parliamentary rules. I've never, for him to try and blame other people now these are his words. They're not mine. They're not anyone else's. It's his words. I don't use this language on social media and publicly abusing people. As I said, there is always argy-bargies. The Premier gives as good as she gets in Parliament, but this is not normal. This is not normal behaviour of a Member of Parliament. And him trying to put every member of parliament in the same category just shows how out of touch he is and how arrogant he is. And this is why, if he's not making the decision to work out whether he should be a member of parliament, and I would say to you today, he should not. He does not represent the people of Nicklin. And I would say the people of Nicklin that contact us, contact me and my office, questioning whether he is the right person to represent them. And the unequivocal answer to that is absolutely not.
And do you think it crosses a line as well in terms of not just the language used, but I guess how personal the attack is, in terms of crossing the line from normal political?
And as I say, normal political discourse and disagreements, that happens all the time in Parliament, and particularly on social media. And look at Mark Bailey. He's spends hundreds of hours on Twitter every day trolling people. This guy, the member for Nicklin, though, takes it way too far. The absolute personal insults, and then thinking he can just delete it after it's out there in the public domain and get away with it. That's why we're standing up for it, because we're saying, no, he shouldn't be in Parliament and he shouldn't be engaging in this sort of discourse, using such vulgar language in a public space that everyone can see, including children. He is just not fit for office.
What sort of punishment would you think would be fit? I guess if this had come from a member of your party, for example, what sort of punishment would you be thinking?
Well, this is Rob Skelton is obviously a repeat offender. He's done this before. We get communications from time to time from people who say this is just his behaviour, and I think there should be two things. One, he needs to look in the mirror and consider whether he should keep representing the people of Nicklin and whether he's the best person that could be representing Nicklin. And I think if he did that honestly, looking at his history and behaviour, I think the answer to that is no. So he has to consider whether he is the best person to stay in that role, and the answer to that is no, and then he should take action against himself in that regard, which would be stepping down from office. The second person is the Premier. The Premier is his boss. The Premier has been Premier for 8 years. He has been the member for Nicklin since 2020, and she should take strong action rather than just, it's not appropriate. But this is the attitude of the government, right? This is the culture of the government, because a senior minister, Mark Furner, called Ros Bates a silly, dopey woman in Parliament. And that senior Labor minister was not condemned by the Minister for Women, Shannon Fentiman, the Attorney General, Vet Darth at the time, or Premier Palaszczuk. So you've got people like that calling those sorts of insults in Parliament to women, and the Premier not taking action against those members. You've got the member for Nicklin, Rob Skelton, calling not only other members of Parliament but his own constituents, where people were questioning government policies last year, and he's arguing with them and basically saying all sorts of rude things to people online, and then of course deletes it again. The Premier should consider whether that is the type of representative she wants in the Labor Party. And if she keeps him there, then she accepts that behaviour, because he is a repeat offender. And by keeping him in the team, by keeping him in the Labor Party, shows that she accepts that behaviour and will keep accepting it from the member for Nicklin.
Skelton only won by a small margin last time. Are you feeling pretty confident that someone from the LNP will be able to take over his position next election? I
feel sorry for the people of Nicklin that they have had to endure 3 years of Robert Skelton and possibly another 12 months. The LNP will have a great candidate, and I just hope the people of Nicklin will look at the representation they've been getting out of Robert Skelton, the abuse they're copying from their own Member of Parliament, and if he's not going to resign himself, do the honourable thing and resign himself, then hopefully the people of Nicklin will force that on him in 2024.
Thank you.
All good. Yeah. Thanks everyone.